welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name's Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 65 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire series by George Martin. Today we'll be discussing chapter 64 of A Game of Thrones, that's Dany 8.
Wow, 64. We've only got 8 chapters left in this book.
Crazy.
I tell you what, seemed like we'd never get to this day.
It really did, yeah. I mean, I guess when you make a base camp at the bottom of a very big mountain, you think you're never going to get there, but eventually you will.
That's right. Anyway, so we're going to chat about the chapter, and we're going to try not to spoil any future plot points for you. And hopefully, while we do all that, we're going to provide you some entertainment along the way.
We will summarise what's happened, we'll discuss our thoughts on it, provide you some useful background, compare it to the television show, indulge in a little pedantry, and cover some reader mail. Be sure to check out the show notes. They'll provide you with some additional information about the characters and other things of note in this chapter. How are you, McKelly?
I am pretty good. I'm doing all right. How about you?
Not too bad. All
right.
Been a stressful week. It's been the week of the election here.
Yeah, you and I have not talked all week. That's pretty unusual. But it's not like an intentional thing. We've just been both so busy. We have not talked all week. So I have not had a chance to personally thank you for being Molly's accent coach. That it really helped. I couldn't hear. We were having an issue with the speakers, so Molly had to use headphones. So backstory, as you might remember last episode, I was asking Simon about a character that has a slight English accent because they were raised in America, but one parent was English, and that Molly had been submitted to a role with such a character, and she got an audition for the character, and Simon spent, 45 minutes or so helping her fine-tune a subtle English accent?
I hope she's adopting it in all facets of her life. I hope she's not just holding it back for this. I want her speaking like this.
Right. She spent a lot of time speaking like that in preparation for the audition. So, but it was, she beforehand, she was either Mary Poppins or Molly Ray. And after spending time with you, it was much more, I thought it was really well done, subtle, it is English accent. So.
I mean, obviously, I've never done this before, but of course, I do have a little bit of experience.
Right. Yeah.
But it was interesting how you could find things as she, like it was the words like doesn't and couldn't. Being American, she still trailed off on the end of it.
Yeah.
Like, couldn't.
Yeah.
Doesn't. And just adding that T sound, that is a natural thing for British people to do, and. Yeah, but it's all about the T's, in fact, because like the better, when she was going through it, she said better.
Right.
And I was like, wait, say that one like better, and you'll sound better.
Emphasize the T's. She mentioned you saying emphasizing the T's. So
yeah. So when will she hear?
I don't know if she'll hear. You know how those things are. We'll contact you. Don't contact us. So I imagine. She'll either hear for callbacks or she'll hear if she got the part. But if she was eliminated, I doubt we'll ever hear from them again. But it was.
Do you know how many were in the frame?
No.
Oh, and it is the lead character.
It's the lead character. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the first time she's ever gotten an audition for a lead.
I can't even imagine. I hope if they cast her, they give her an actual voice coach.
that might be prudent. Although maybe they could retain you. Yeah. God,
that would be so exciting.
Yes, it really would. She just asked me last night if I think she's still in the running, and I was like, I don't know.
The one thing I will say is that in doing the coaching, she was reading lines from the script. Or in fact, she wasn't reading them because she was off book because she's that good.
Right.
She's that much of a professional. I thought her acting was terrific.
Yeah?
I thought her accent needed the work that we were putting into it.
Right.
But I thought her acting was really good.
Good, yeah.
I mean, I am not a casting director. I have very little experience in the theatre. But...
You would have hired her.
I would have hired her on the spot. She was terrific.
Yeah, it's good to hear because, I sometimes feel a little biased as her dad. And
yeah, she was entirely convincing. I mean, I don't know what they're looking for.
Yeah, she takes a lot. She's been taking lessons for a long time, and with each I see improvement personally. So, we'll see.
Man, I can't wait to get a mention at the Oscars.
Anyway, I guess we should get down to business here.
And we should, yes. It's not. I think we've become we've become convinced that we're interesting. The more we've done this, we think people probably want to hear us chat to each other. Let's just do that.
I had to cut off last week's halfway through our conversation and move it to the back end again because we were rambling on and on. So,
all right, let's get down to business. Quick recap of what Dany was up to last time we saw her. She was taking in the carnage of a Lázarine village after the Dothraki battle. She saved several women from rape by men of Khal Drogo's Khalasar, a move that did not sit well with the rest of the Khalasar, apart from Drogo himself. He was beaming over the fieriness his in-utero son was giving Dany. Dany then allowed a healer woman she'd saved from rape to tend to Drogo's wounds, again against the wishes of his blooriders. The healer, Mirri Maz Duur, patched him up with a poultice and received a not-too-subtle warning from Quotho. The Khal dies, you die. Alright, why don't we give them the summary of this chapter then?
Okay. Dany, Khal Drogo, and the Khalasar ride through a dry and barren land. Drogo has been more and more despondent since removing that poultice that Mirri Maz Duur made him in the Lázarine village, to the point of silence today. He removed it because it burned and had the herb women make him a soothing one instead. He's also been using milk of the poppy to dull the pain, which Mirri Maz Duur specifically told him not to do. As Dany is thinking all this, Drogo falls from his horse, and that might not sound like a big deal to us, but to the Dothraki, that's huge. A Khal who can't ride can't lead.
Actually, falling from a horse sounds like kind of a big deal to me.
It does. I was thinking that as I said it.
So, Dany and Drogo's bloodriders rush to Drogo. Dany commands that they camp where they are. It's not a great place to set up camp, but she knows he can't ride any further. Dany tells the bloodriders to use her pregnancy as the excuse. However, as Dany and the bloodriders watch him fall, so too did too many others to keep this a secret. Dany commands that Quotho and Hago fetch Mirri Maz Duur, which they begrudgingly agree to do.
When Drogo's tent is set up, Dany has him taken into it for shade and privacy. He's burning up with fever. Her new handmaid, Eroa, voices what they're all thinking, that Drogo is dying, and this is met with denial and a slap across the face from Dany. Soon after, Jorah Mormont arrives, confirming the rumor that Drogo's fall is spreading quickly through the camp. He too thinks it's the end for Drogo. He says there's no time for grief. It's time to run, far and fast. This confuses Dany. Why would she run? She's carrying the prophesied stallion who mounts the world.
Jorah explains that this Khalasar isn't going to follow a baby. The minute Drogo is gone, it will devour itself and almost certainly kill Rhaego in the process. And the Bloodriders won't help protect her or her child. They have to follow Drogo into the Nightlands. They will take Dany to Vaes Dothrak to join the Dosh Khaleen and then off themselves. The prospect of spending the rest of her life with the old crones doesn't sit well with Dany, but rather than follow Jorah's fleeing plan, she doubles down on the Save Drogo plan.
Quotho and Hago bring Mirri Maz Duur to the tent as Dany commanded. When they see the state of the cow, they begin to beat Mirri Maz Duur and threaten worse. Dany stops it, but not without threats from Quotho on her well-being as well. Eventually, Mirri adds a third voice that it's too late for the call. She blames his demise on him removing her poultice and using milk of the poppy to dull the pain. She suggests easing Drogo's slide into death, but when Dany pleads with her, she says dark blood magic is the only thing powerful enough to save him, but the cost is great, a life for a life. Dany says, do it.
After a horse sacrifice, Drogo's horse in fact, Mirri kicks everyone out of the tent, as bad things will be going on and no living person can see them. Outside, chaos ensues. Jorah returns in his armour and wants to know what Dany has done. The three blood riders also return to the tent. Quotho storms to the tent to stop the show inside, but Dany commands her cast to stop him. Fighting breaks out, leaving some of her cast dead. Jorah badly injured and all three blood riders dead. Dany has a terrible stomach cramp and feels wetness on her legs. Jorah, not knowing the warning Mirri gave Dany about staying out, carries her into the tent because Mirri Maz Duur is supposed to be her midwife.
Yeah,
Stressful stuff. So I think the one take home from all this is you should follow your doctor's instructions to the letter. Don't be, because it's interesting actually. Just to sort of like give us sort of like a big perspective on the whole thing. In the previous chapter, I was very, very nervous that Mirri Maz Duur was intentionally poisoning Khal Drogo to his death.
Right.
In this chapter, I am convinced that she did not do it. That she actually gave him good medicine, and it was his own actions that have cost him his life, or potentially cost him his life.
Yeah, I could definitely see that aspect. It's just curious to me. Like I'm no herbal medicine expert or medicine expert of any kind.
I'm no fictional herbal medicine.
Right. But I'm not sure what taking that one off and putting a cooler, wetter poultice on and drinking milk of the poppy, why it would have created such a big mess.
Well, I think her point was that it was in the process of working, and his taking it off just because it was uncomfortable.
Allow things to fester, I guess.
Yeah.
But things aren't looking good for him regardless.
No.
Seems like if they have to resort to the kind of blood magic thing that they resorted to at the end of this chapter, it's not a great prognosis for a full recovery.
Well, I mean, Mirri Maz Duur must believe that she can do it. I mean, she, unless she was actually just digging a tunnel under the tent to get out of there, it's making a rash promise of something that will never work. Bring his horse in here, I'll slit its throat, and just stay out of here for 4 hours.
I need a shovel, some scissors, pickaxe.
Some stout timbers.
So we don't know how much time has passed since they left the Lazarine village, but we do know that he ripped Mirri Maz Duur's poultice off 6 days ago, and according to Dany, he did so because it burned and itched, and apparently it was a rapid decline after removing the poultice.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, but I mean, he literally did what he was not supposed to do as well, which was the drinking the wine and the milk of the poppy. He was supposed to stay off those during this time. He
basically broke every rule that Mirri Maz Duur laid out for him. He drank the milk of the poppy, which it was actually poppy wine, but and took off the poultice. The thing that kind of surprised me, I'm not saying his pedantry, just kind of surprised me, was that Drogo seemed to be so open about his suffering with the pain of the original poultice and drinking the milk of the poppy to dull the pain, because part of his aura is his toughness and imperviousness to pain. So must have really burned.
But I don't know. I think there's a sort of. I think I've noticed this in people who tough people that I've known. There is sort of like a dichotomy of like also being a bit like a princess with the P over certain things, Tough in this aspect of life, a bit of a wuss over here.
Yeah, that's true. Stacy's about the toughest person I know when it comes to pain tolerance. And yeah, I could see what you're saying.
Yeah. So Dany notices flies crawling on Khal Drogo. He's not reacting to them. That doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. If you're not, the one was like crawling up his mustache. Like if there's one that close to your nose and you don't care enough to wipe it away, you're in bad shape.
Yeah, and at that point he falls off the horse.
Yeah, I mean, she's not the only one. She's not the only one nervous about this turn of events here. The blooriders have some skin in the game as well.
Oh yeah, pretty much all their skin.
Yes, exactly. But like I said in the summary, falling off his horse is a pretty big deal, aside from the hard landing that ensues, especially as his stallion is so large that I'm sure it was quite the fall. Because
you know what? I've always felt this is a little bit pedantry though, because they get off their horses all. It's not like they live on their horses. They get off their horses all the time. And I mean, like, if you were in battle and you were knocked off your horse and then you continued to battle, you wouldn't lose any face. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I think it's the can't ride part. The cow that can't ride can't lead. Like if he just falls off because he's unable to continue riding is the issue that they have there. But you remember the pregnant women ride up until just before the time of birth. Dany mentioned that in one of the earlier Dany chapters. So the fall likely is costing him respect within his Khalasar, but not enough respect that the fear of upsetting him isn't effective, because that's what Dany uses with Quotho to command him to go get Mirri Maz Duur. He refuses at first, and she says, "Oh yeah, you want the cow to hear about this when he recovers?" And he's like, "No."
Right, because this is still the point in the chapter where he's just sick. They haven't revealed the wound to know how bad it is at this point. So
yes,
yeah. So Dany has a new handmaid, Eroe. She's the first girl that she saved from rape in the last chapter. I have to say, as we were going over the summary, it occurred to me that I wonder if Eroe was written into the story simply for the slap in the face. Just so that Dany didn't have to slap one of her friends in the face.
Right. I thought that was a bit harsh too, because she wasn't the only one that mentioned it. She said, she looked at Drogo and said, "He's dying," and she whacks him in the face and says, "The Khal can't die." But then Jorah comes in and says, "He's dying," and she doesn't whack him in the face. Mirri Maz Duur comes in and says, "He's dying," and she doesn't whack her in the face.
Poor Eroe.
Yeah, seriously.
Rough way to get written into the book.
But Jorah does arrive to the tent, and he mentions to Dany straight away, "Hey, there's rumors flying all over the place that the Khal has fallen off his horse, so this secret is not very well kept, as we thought it might not be well kept."
Yeah. So he wants them to flee, he wants them to get out of there straight away. And his reasoning is good. I mean, obviously the Dothraki don't favour blood succession as much as they do strength. And so
right.
An unborn child can't lead, you know.
Yes, exactly. But I wonder if they tried to run, could they actually get away? You'd have to think the blooriders would surely be hunting them down. One, it's their job to take her to Vaes Dothrak to join the Dosh Khaleen, and two, it's a really good excuse to not go and join the Khal just yet. You know,
I'm going to chase you until my dying day.
till my last breath, I'm going to chase you.
I think the other thing is, I mean, remember that their deal is they take revenge on the person to blame, and they take the Khaleesi to Vaes Dothrak.
That's right.
So
yeah.
Ideally for them, Mirri Maz Duur runs one way and Dany runs the other way.
They accidentally leave some really fast horses just sitting right outside the tent.
This is a plane ticket.
I can't see where it's going to, but it's far away. But Jorah also asks them if, he doesn't ask them. Jorah asks Dany if she thinks her cause will come with them. And Dany says that Drogo commanded them to protect her, but without the Khal, she's uncertain. Of course, we learn later in the chapter that they seem to be very much pro Dany as they fight the blooriders to do as she's commanding.
Yeah, I think the thing is that they would go with her while Drogo's still alive, which is when Jorah wants to run. Jorah wants to run right now.
Right.
And the cast would go with her because they would be like, well, following the letter of what we were told, we go with her and protect her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. You know, they've obviously shown plenty of loyalty, but like you remember last chapter, they stopped the raping of the Lazarene women, even though they had no idea what was wrong with it. But is that loyalty to Khal Drogo to do whatever Dany says, or is it to Dany herself? That's what we didn't know.
Yeah, but I guess if they get away before he dies, then there's always the plausible deniability that he's still alive somewhere, and right. They may eventually start to question, well, shouldn't we go back then?
Good point.
Dany's confused by the idea of fleeing. She feels that the Khalasar, she just doesn't see she's not thinking too straight, but she doesn't see why they need to flee, and Jorah lays it all out. You know, that the Khalasar's strength is what Drogo holds together. This Drogo is the glue in the Khalasar.
Yeah.
And the prophecy of the baby will mean nothing as soon as he's gone.
If anything, it would be put her in more precarious
Right.
situation. Because
Yep.
he is the prophesized stallion who mounts the world. And whoever takes over this Khalasar after Drogo is gone won't want to have to deal with that competition when Rhaego would grow up and maybe challenge for the Khalasar again.
Yeah.
But Dany remembers, she thinks back, so Jorah says they'll probably feed Rhaego to the dogs. And Dany thinks back, apparently Viserys had told her about what happened to her brother Rhaegar's children during the Robert's Rebellion when Gregor Clegane killed both of the little kids, and she thinks of them as the usurper's dogs, and I'm guessing that's because Gregor Clegane, their sigil is a dog, so maybe it was a little bit too literal that Viserys referred to him as dog because of their sigil.
The other thing that struck me here is that is Drogo's authority now permanently diminished by falling from his horse? I mean,
yes, exactly.
Pedantry-wise, I think it shouldn't be. I think this is silly to make this a rule because, okay, let's say he gets better. The next day he's back to full strength again, and he's like, cracks his knuckles, jumps back on his horse.
Right.
Someone's going to challenge him just because yesterday he fell off his horse.
I think maybe it's a cumulative thing. If he was strong enough to be able to put up a fight, they might be like, whoa, back down. But if they see that he is like weak and no longer the Khal that he was over time, they might challenge for rule over the Khalasar.
I hear you. So Dany, not entirely surprisingly, does not want to go and live with the terrible old women, as she refers to them, in Vias Dothraki.
Yeah.
Although, again, they gave her good news.
Yeah, he's right. Yeah.
She owes them something.
She mentions
although apparently what she owes them actually is a death sentence for her son. If they'd said, he's going to be all right.
Yeah. Middle management at best. Don't get your hopes up too high on this one. You have time. You're young. You can have more kids.
The new Khal would be like, fine, good.
Right.
We need a bean counter.
Yeah, she's mentioned in previous chapters how she has mixed feelings about the Dosh Khaleen. On one hand, she mentioned that it was nice to know she had an honored place to go when she got old. That was in Dany 6, when she was kind of trying to make peace with staying in Essos and just doing the Khalasar thing and not going to Westeros. And she thought, it's not too bad here. If I was anyone but the blood of the dragon, I could deal with this. But then on the other hand, in the one before that, Dany 5, she said it was unsettling that she had no choice but to go live out her days with the Dosh Khaleen. So
you had a good thought about the Dosh Khaleen, which I hadn't had. So
about how she calls them old and ancient, but with all the Dothraki infighting, there must be plenty of other former Khaleesi's in her boat around her age.
Yes, I hadn't thought of that, but you're absolutely right. I mean, it must be full of... it must be...
Right, yeah.
Like
I mean...
a bunch of young ladies, in fact.
You would think that Ogo... Yeah, you'd think Ogo, who Khal Drogo just killed last chapter, probably had a Khaleesi, and she was probably youngish.
But actually, there's a question. What happened to Ogo's wife? Is she actually just a slave now?
Yeah, because they also killed all of his bloodriders, who are supposed to be the one... Maybe he respects the rules enough to have sent some of his own people to escort her to Dosh Khaleen.
Is she like, I'll take my chances as a slave, frankly.
At least I get to see the world. I also thought maybe the old and ancient is relative because she's 13, so 25-year-old might be old and ancient to her.
And under that blazing sun every day, I mean, they might look leathery and wrinkled even at 25.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So Mirri Maz Duur is finally dragged to the tent. She's been made to march all along behind the Khalasar. Apparently she's on foot, limping bloody feet. She looks hollow-eyed and haggard.
Yeah, you know, you'd think they'd keep her handy and in a bit more of an honored place since she was trusted enough to fix Drogo up and also expected to help Dany birth Rhaego. And then they just she puts the poultice on and they toss her to the back of the Khalasar. You'd think, Aroa has a spot in Dany's entourage. You'd think that Mirri Maz Duur would be in that same entourage.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. And especially if you take my interpretation that Mirri Maz Duur really was trying to help here, like the day he starts prying off, putting on a new poultice and drinking the milk of the pot, she'd be like, no, seriously, stop.
Right.
But she's 100 yards behind, completely unaware that this is going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she, and she's got a lot of things at stake here. Basically, her whole life is tied to his life. So, Kotho had made that pretty clear. If something happens to the Khal, you're in trouble. So
but pretty much everybody in that conversation's life is tied to Drogo's life. Because Kotho himself, Dany pretty much, and Mirri definitely.
Yeah. So you'd think she would be like, listen, I'm the only one that can deal with this poultice. I've got to stay with you guys.
Yeah. But I wonder if they go at a pace. I mean, obviously, there's not a lot of value in killing the slaves. They must go at a pace that the slaves can keep up, reasonably.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
And I mean, the Lazarene were slightly nomadic. Well, no, that's not quite true. I always think of them as nomadic, but it didn't actually say that they were. But they must have shoes, is what I'm thinking.
Right. Some version of shoes.
Yes.
But it was kind of hard to tell here if Mirri Maz Duur was being sincere or not, because she says after Dany stops Hago and Kotho from beating and doing worse to Mirri, she says to Dany, you saved me once more. And then when Mirri says, Drogo's pretty much, there's nothing I can do for him. And she says, please do something. And Mirri says, you don't ask a slave, you tell him, which is verbatim what Drogo said last chapter about Dany asking Mirri to please help Drogo. So I'm wondering if she is flaunting in her face that she is up to no good here, and Dany just doesn't realize it, or, because she said you saved me once more. Well, what is she really saving her from? She's still being dragged along at the back of the Khalasar. She looks terrible. It's not like she's been completely saved. She just is better off than she would have been had she been killed in the village.
Possibly.
Yes.
Although actually a little bit more under the spotlight.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Quotho threatens that when Drogo dies, Dany is nothing, which is true, but then again, he does have a responsibility to take her to Vaes Dothrak. You can't completely ignore that. And actually, I do wonder about that. I wonder if that is the long term for Dany, that she is taken to Vaes Dothrak and has the baby there. I wonder if that might be how it works out, because she's not, obviously, she goes into labour at the end of this chapter, but she wasn't due yet. If Drogo dies tonight, they could, behead Mirri Maz Duur and off they go to Vaes Dothrak the next day.
Yeah. I think it goes back to, though, when Rhaego grows to adulthood. Him challenging
Right, but if he grows up in Vaes Dothrak with the Dosh Khalim.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work. She couldn't be the only
pregnant Khaleesi.
Yeah. And the only one with children. I guess if the children are grown enough, they would stay with the Khalasar.
Stay with the Khalasar, yeah.
But small children, maybe they're killed. I don't know. I mean,
well, yes. I mean, that was
Jorah seems to think they are.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, but he was specific that this was because of the prophecy that he would be killed.
Yeah.
I mean, if without the prophecy, he would just be Drogo's son. Yeah, sure. A claim to the Khalasar, but only by feat of strength.
Yeah.
There's no more reason to kill that baby than to kill every baby.
Right. We did a background on being a Kalaka, which is like the heir to a Khal, and that they aren't necessarily guaranteed to lead. It has to do with whether they are strong enough to be able to do that. So, but it certainly didn't sound like Quotho had plans on taking Dany back to Vase Dothrak when he said she is nothing and that,
But I think part of that is him blaming her for
yes, right,
Mirri Maz Duur's interference, which is leading to Drogo's death, and then he would have conflicting rules as Blood Rider.
Yes.
He would need to kill Dany and take her to Vase Dothrak.
Yeah, of course, it's really all that's separating him from death. So maybe he'd have a change of heart and be like, we're going to take the long way back to Vase Dothrak.
Fire Westeros.
Yes, right.
Fire the Iron Throne.
Let's go finish Drogo's plans first. Because that's going to be a tough sell when he gets to the Nightlands and mentions to Drogo. Or Drogo, already knows that Quotho has killed his moon and stars versus taking her to the Dosh Khaleen like he's supposed to.
Yeah.
But, I feel for Dany here. She's losing it all. It's all falling apart. She kind of had everything. She finally had a safe, respected place in this Khalasar. She had love. She and Khal Drogo seemed to be in love. She had hope that they were, going to go get the Iron Throne back. And she was finally going home to Westeros where she'd never been before. And it's all falling apart due to what look like painful, yes, but also fairly superficial wounds. So
but you got to look after them, You just gotta look after them.
Yeah.
It's the way of the world.
But it's a tough loss. She's losing it all right here.
Yeah, for sure. But there's a way out. Mirri says that the blood magic can save Drogo, but it has a terrible price. You've got to pay for life with death.
Yes, and Dany, she's stressed about the thought when Mirri says that. She's like, "Oh man, I've always said I would give my life for him, but..." And then Mirri's like, "Well, it's not your life," and she's like, "Okay, do it. Whoever else it is, fine, do it."
But one thing that surprises me there is the slight selfishness of Dany there, because she doesn't mention Rhaego.
Right.
Because she has life within her. I would have thought, not us, but she really is a little bit selfish. She's like, not me, right?
Yeah. As long as it's not me, quit your blabbing and get it done. Come on. Chop, chop. Yeah, you're right. That is, maybe she was still thinking of Rhaego as part of her because he's inside of her. And, it's a stressful time. She didn't really think it all the way through. But you would think she would have thought, it's not Rhaego or me, right?
Yeah. So, outside the tent, people are gathering. The Blood Riders aren't pleased. So Dany leaves the tent when the ritual begins, with the sacrifice of Drogo's horse.
Mirri kicks her out because there's going to be dead things dancing and no living thing is allowed to see this.
Right, which is the key point here. The no living thing is allowed back in here, so...
But things escalate quickly once outside. Jorah arrives in his armor. Dany sent him away to put his armor on because she thought, I might need your sword. He comes back and calls her a little fool. He says, "What have you done, you little fool?" And then pretty much at the same time, all three Blood Riders show up. And, Quotho goes to storm into the tent and stop Mirri Maz Duur. And Dany shouts to her Khas to stop him. And there's a very quick but slightly confusing fight between Quaro and Quotho because their names sound so much the same. Mm-hmm. I had to read it through like 3 times to make sure I got the same problem. Who was doing what. So Quaro is one of Dany's Khas. Quotho is the Blood Rider. Quaro, background on him, when Viserys attacked Dany in the Dothraki Sea, it was Quaro who urged Dany to take his ear to teach him respect. And he was also one of the ones at the Western Market. He challenged Ricardo to an eating contest, and he helped stop the whole wine assassin thing. And it was him that Dany made go stop the raping of Aroa at the Lazarine village. So he's pretty loyal.
So she could slap her in the face, yeah.
Right, so later she could slap her in the face. But ultimately, Quotho kills Quaro. And then Jorah and Quotho tussle. And I was thinking while I was reading that part, I bet Jorah was wishing he hadn't left Longclaw back on Bear Island at this moment.
But it's a bad workman who blames his tools.
Right? Yes.
If you're sticking with a pointy end, it won't matter whether it's a long claw or not.
Good advice.
So Ricardo and Drogo kill Hago. Catholo gets a knife to Dany's throat. Ago shoots him with an arrow. So it was the whole thing was quite a bit confusing here because it's hard to remember which side all of them were on, and it was kind of like a general melee. But
yes.
Dany goes down in the fight, right? She falls over.
Kotho pushes her over,
right?
And but Jorah does kill Quotho in the battle. He gets very badly injured.
He does, more badly injured than I remembered.
Yeah, he took a sword, an arak to the hip. It caught in the bone. That's how he had time to kill Quotho, was because Quotho's arak got caught in his hip bone. But then, that's just like
leave a mark.
Minutes later, he picks up Dany and carries her into the tent with a.
Well,
he's a tough guy. I'm telling you.
Is the arak still sticking out of him?
Right. Yeah. So Dany's, kind of watching this all unfold, and she sees shadows dancing in the tent, and along with Mirri Maz Duur, and two of the things she sees, like the shadows on the wall, are a giant wolf and a man wreathed in flames. And I was trying to think, based on the info we have at this point, what we might think they are. If they're anything. I mean, the fact that one's a wolf, obviously makes you think Stark.
Yeah.
But, maybe it's Stark's because of Lyanna, because of what her brother did to Lyanna, or what her father did to Brandon and Rickard.
I got nothing. I mean, I think obviously there's some hints at Westerosi things in there,
right.
But you would imagine that they have nothing to do with Khal Drogo and Mirri Maz Duur, really.
Exactly.
So
yes, exactly.
I think some of it might be in the eye of the beholder. She sees shapes on the surface of the tent, and her own mind fills in the blanks.
I was thinking maybe some symbolism between the wolf, being a northern creature, ice, and the man wreathed in fire, ice and fire, a song of ice and fire.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll just have to. Maybe we keep an eye out for things as we go forward that might have fit this.
And so the chapter ends with Jorah taking Dany. Dany's gone into labour. Jorah's taking her into the tent to see Mirri Maz Duur, because Mirri Maz Duur has got midwife skills. But Dany weakly is saying, no, don't take me in there.
He's doing it because none of the Dothraki midwives will even get near Dany. They say she's cursed. So
because of what she's done earlier today.
Yes, because of all this that's going on, they think she's cursed. So he has no choice. The only midwife he can think of is Mirri Maz Duur. So but she specifically told Dany, "Do not come. You have to be out of here when this starts. There's bad things going on." So you just got to wonder if there will be ramifications for taking her in there.
Well, there's two humans and a unborn child heading into the tent where no living thing can go.
Right.
So
that does not bode well for there being no repercussions.
Yes. Well, fingers crossed for Mirri Maz Duur's head sticking out of a hole in the ground. I told you to stay out of here.
I needed at least 2 more hours.
So background, what you got?
Well, background was very challenging this episode.
Nothing.
Yeah. I went like word for word through the chapter trying to look for something. So the best I
think you found something good. I think you found something very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, when we have tricky chapters like this, I try to get as creative as I can to find something interesting. So I thought we'd talk a bit about the Dothraki language. And so according to George Martin, Tolkien was a philologist and an Oxford don and could spend decades laboriously inventing Elvish in all its detail. Him, unfortunately, is only a hard-working science fiction and fantasy novelist, and he doesn't have his gifts for languages, referring to Tolkien's gifts for languages. That is to say, he has not actually created a Valyrian language. The best he could do was to try and sketch in each of the chief tongues of his imaginary world in broad strokes and give them each their characteristic sound and spelling. So, the Dothraki language used in the TV show was constructed by a man named David Peterson, a member of the Language Creation Society. And the language takes cues from the known Dothraki words used in the books here and expands a whole bunch on it. The show's version of the language is also inspired by some real-life languages such as Russian, Turkish, Estonian, and Swahili. The Dothraki language was developed under two restrictions. The language needed to match the terms used in the book, and it needed to be easy to pronounce and learn by the actors. So these two rules were an influence on the grammar and phonology of the Dothraki language developed for the TV show. And as of September 2011, the language comprised of 3,163 words. Not all these words are publicly known, and according to Peterson, Martin has asked him for help in translating some passages for the upcoming Winds of Winter.
That's really interesting. I have to say, I think in many ways that the effort that they put into the Dothraki language in the TV show was one of its crowning achievements. Because, I mean, it makes...
Absolutely, yeah.
When they speak in Dothraki, it's entirely believable. If they were just babbling and just going blah, 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 it would not sound half as good. But like the speech that Khal Drogo gave when he promises to give Dany Westeros is just, I mean, it's fantastic. And if it was just made up gibberish, it just would not be as good. It couldn't possibly be as good. So I really think they made the right decision, and good for them. I mean, it's... And it's going to make the books better now as well.
Right. Yeah. I always think of when Dwight was teaching Aaron to speak Dothraki in the office.
Uh-huh.
And she didn't know that it was a made-up language. She thought she was learning a foreign language. Speaking of the office, Molly just told me yesterday she just finished her 20th time through the show.
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how accurate that count is, but that's what she told me. She says that I promised to buy her some office paraphernalia for her bedroom if she ever reached that point, which seems like not something I would say, as I'm constantly telling her she spends too much time on the screen, but she says I said it. Maybe I said it jokingly. I don't recall, but...
Wow, you caused this.
Yeah, I know, seriously.
I mean, in that time, she could have learned Dothraki.
Right, yeah. She should know better to not take me for my word when I say such outlandish things.
The thing I always think of whenever we're talking about the languages is the scene from Frasier when he's speaking at his son's bar mitzvah, and he gets his colleague at work. His colleague at work speaks Hebrew, I guess. Or
maybe
Yiddish or Hebrew.
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one. And so he wants to give the sort of like the toast and speech after the bar mitzvah in Hebrew, Yiddish, whichever one it is. But in asking the guy to do it, he offends him, and so the guy does it, but he does it in Klingon. Frasier gives the whole speech in Klingon, and one of his son's friends is like, "You've got the coolest dad ever."
That's good stuff.
So, comparison with the television show, this is all very closely kept, and it actually takes up quite a lot of screen time. In I think we're in episode 9 of the first season of Game of Thrones. Basically we see Khal Drogo fall off his horse, and the sort of contempt that the riders immediately feel for him. Dany tells them, "We're going to pitch the tents here for the night." They say this is not a good place to pitch the tents, and she's like, "No, it is." Then the second scene where basically he's now in the tent and he's looking very sick. Jorah comes in. All of this is kept very, very closely. But when Mirri Maz Duur comes in, Quotho threatens her again, as he's wont to do. And they take off the not the poultice, because there was like a bandage under the poultice, and they take that off now, and you see it's looking very bad for him. And then the next scene is when they actually kill the horse and blood sprays everywhere. So Dany actually gets sprayed with blood. So she goes outside the tent covered in blood, which really adds to the sense that she's been, partaking in witchcraft in there.
Right. Yeah, so, that would add to like the whole she's cursed type thing.
Yeah. If you come out and say, just don't go in there, somebody farted, So, but if you come out there covered in blood and say, don't go in there, you're up to something.
Yes, right.
And then she does get knocked down and carried in. One minor difference I noticed was in the book, she is telling Jorah not to take her in there, and he's not listening or not hearing. In the show, she doesn't say anything. He just carries her in there.
She's thinking it, but she can't say. She can't do anything but kind of like moan and stuff.
Oh, that's right. She doesn't actually say it. That's right. She only thinks it and moans. In the show, she's completely silent. It's like she's passed out, sort of thing. And Jorah is definitely not as badly hurt, because he's not even limping when he carries her. He takes a couple of wounds in the fight with Quotho, but not.
Yeah, you'd think he'd be limping a bit if he just had an arak in his.
I think the arak sticks in his armor in the show.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's highly preferable. That's what armor's for, isn't it?
Yes, that's the idea. Well, not necessarily to catch the sword, but to make sure it doesn't get through.
Right.
Pedantry.
So, did you have anything in this chapter?
Oh, I got nothing. I mean,
I don't either.
Apart from my general sort of like, there's things wrong with the Dothraki tradition. Apart from that.
Yeah.
And that's too nebulous to put in here, really.
Right. Yeah, I felt like last couple Dothraki chapters, we've been poking holes at some of the traditions and customs. But so in this one, the only pedantry I have is an audiobook pedantry. And Roy Dotrice, I mean, he's amazing. I love listening to him, but the voice he uses for Quotho is so different from all of the other Dothraki. He sounds like a Bond villain to me. Then he's like, you don't tell me what to do, Khalasar. It's very, it's very like almost like sophisticated evil genius English accent.
Yeah. Well, I studied at Oxford before I joined the
right. Every time it takes me out of the, like you're engrossed in the story, and then Quotho starts talking, and I'm like, what is this voice he's doing? Where did he come up with this?
I've never listened to the audiobooks, but it's got to be an enormous challenge to.
Oh my gosh, he does an amazing job. He must have just run out of voices to do, and was like, I got no choice. We got to go with Bond villain here.
Maybe that's it. He's got like two buckets. One is accent, and the other one is like character. And he's got like Dothraki Bond villain. I can do that.
That'll work. But he won't have to do it anymore, I guess, because Quotho's gone. So.
Yes, as Quotho comes back as a white later on.
Right, yeah.
So that ties in nicely with what you're going to talk about in News and Notes.
Yeah, so News and Notes, I tweeted this out. It was a really interesting article about a study that was done on what makes A Song of Ice and Fire and of Game of Thrones so engaging and causes people to obsess so much about it, which I can't really relate to.
Who would do such a thing?
And so basically what the article gets at is that it has to do with the amount of characters. There's more than 2,000 named characters and more than 41,000 interactions between them. But each character only has about 150 or so other characters that particular character interacts with. And I guess that, according to the study, is very similar to how our lives are.
So help me, because I looked at this and I was a little bit, I think we were both a little bit confused by the study, but
yes.
So is the average number of interactions of a character in Game of Thrones 150, or is that the main characters have about 150 different characters.
I think it's the main characters.
Because okay,
if you look at that, it has the little social network thing. I think the bigger the dot, the more important the character.
Right.
And so that's how I'm interpreting it.
Yeah, and that makes sense because obviously a minor character couldn't possibly have 150 interactions. They wouldn't be a minor character. It's the major characters have this.
Here's what it says. Even the most predominant characters, those who tell the story, average out to have only 150 other characters to keep track of. That is the same number that the average human brain has evolved to deal with.
Interesting.
So,
I wonder why that is. So basically, I as a person, if I were to list the people I interact with in my life, I would get to about 150 before I start to put names in that I just don't care about.
Yeah, that's a lot to me, it feels like. After I get past about 30, I'll be like, oh,
you're much more selective. But I guess maybe, I mean, this is not like who you care about. This is whose interactions with you are important to you in some way. So, I mean, some of those would be work, some would be family, some would be people neighbors, you just deal friends, with, like the insurance agent or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe...
Yeah, exactly. What I got from it is what we as readers and show watchers, what we relate to so well is that the deep, rich social aspect of it, that there's a lot of characters, but not too many characters that you completely get overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's
enough.
It's in line with our expectations of what the people seem real because they have the right number of social interactions.
Yes, exactly. That's how I interpreted it anyway.
Fascinating.
Yeah. So in other A Song of Ice and Fire news, it's also the 20th anniversary of A Storm of Swords.
Which is book number...
3.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe we'll get Winds of Winter as a anniversary gift.
Yes. Not to belabor the point, but there's only been 2 books since then.
Right.
In 20 years.
Yeah.
No pressure.
If I remember, I read the article a while, it was like earlier this week, that they're putting out a 20th anniversary special edition. So if that's something you're interested in, should be something you could get for a holiday giving or something.
Yeah.
And finally, you see that ring the bell in the notes
Yes,
there?
I have no idea what this means.
I know you don't, but you'll be excited. You'll be excited to hear it. Our mutual good friend that we mentioned on the show before, Tony, he just rang the bell a couple days ago for finishing his chemotherapy treatments.
Oh, great!
So,
I'm glad to hear it.
Yeah.
Well, that's really good to hear, and we wish you all the best, Tony.
Yes, absolutely. It was great news.
All right, so let's conclude. So the big question, just as it was last Dany chapter, is did Mirri Maz Duur plan all this? Was she actually poisoning him, or was she trying to heal him? I'm coming down on the side of no, she's trying to help.
Yeah, if she did this intentionally, it's a pretty risky move on her part. Unless she really, Dany keeps patting herself on the back that she saved her. Maybe she doesn't feel like she's been saved at all and is like, I don't care what happens to me. I'm taking this whole Khalasar down with me.
Yeah. Which was a significant danger when you use someone who you've just enslaved as your healer. There's a significant danger that they've lost all care. Why wouldn't they kill you?
Yes, that is exactly the concern. Yeah, maybe she made the poultice intentionally burn to the point where even Khal Drogo wouldn't leave it on. I don't know. But
and we're very unclear now on what's going to happen to Dany if Drogo dies. The rules say she'll be escorted to Vaes Dothraki, but it seems that the situation is a lot cloudier. Particularly, I think, if the blooriders see her as complicit in the death of Khal Drogo.
Yeah, but of course the blooriders are all dead. So, is there anyone left that's obligated to take her to the Dosh Khaleen, or is she now off the hook for that? Maybe if Drogo were to die, whoever takes over as the leader of the Khalasar would handle that duty. Well, not personally, but be responsible for handling her getting to the Dosh Khaleen.
Yeah.
But even if he lives...
I was going to... You were saying even if he lives. I was going to say, certainly the Khalasar is going to be in considerable turmoil if Drogo dies here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And but even if he lives, does he carry enough clout any longer to keep his Khalasar intact? Just from the standpoint of there's probably going to be some sort of recovery period, but also, which you could understand. I mean, yeah, even if he was badly wounded in battle and it took him a month to recover, you wouldn't think they would, have a coup and take over leadership.
That's my point. Yeah,
but I'm wondering.
Maybe that's the thing. You see that their rules are so strict that basically anyone who wants to just break into that tent and kill him and claim like I defeated him in battle. He was lying there unconscious, but I defeated him.
Right. Yeah, maybe. But also the fact that it certainly appears to a lot of the Khalasar that if he is healed, he's healed through blood magic, and maybe that lessens, maybe they will no longer have respect for him.
Exactly. If you're superstitious or anything like that, he might now not be. Yeah, that's probably the bigger issue. I'm sure if you fall off your horse while you're sick and then you recover and get back on your horse and you're still Khal Drogo, you'll still have my respect,
Right.
But if you're some kind of reincarnated ghost of Khal Drogo, I might look elsewhere for leadership.
Exactly. But then we get to Mirri Maz Duur saying stay out of the tent, and Dany and Jorah just went in, so what's gonna happen with that? Yeah.
Who's at risk?
Right.
There's 3 of them, 2.5 of them have gone in there.
Right. All of them? None of them? Is Mirri Maz Duur just secretly digging a tunnel to get out?
I like this. I don't think this was in our notes to begin with.
Nope,
it's become
not
the
at
theme
all.
of the episode.
Wouldn't it have made more sense to just cut the tent to
back
the back
of the tent,
and run out that way?
Actually, in the scene where they bring the horse into the tent in the TV show, you see the tent being ripped open. And you're led to believe, they're cutting a big opening to bring the horse in, and then the horse comes through the front door, and then I was like, what was that about then? Because it's never explained. You just see a knife go through the tent, and then the horse comes through the front door.
That guy got a little overexcited. He thought the horse fits fine through the front door. Don't worry about it.
I'm thinking it's an editing issue in the show. It's a pedantry for the show. I think they changed their minds. They were like, all right, we're going to need a bigger opening for the horse, and let's show them doing this. And then, wait a minute.
The horse fits just fine.
Horses aren't 12 feet tall, it turns out.
And they can duck their heads. All right. I guess that's it, huh? Anything else?
No, that's good.
All right. Well, as always, you can reach us at ghost.heronhall@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at ghostheronhall. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
And don't forget to leave us a review if you can. That would help us a lot. Just give us 5 stars if you can, and leave us a positive review. We'd be very grateful.
That we would.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.